Why, when Harris is leading in the polls, when she's leading in some betting markets, and when she's leading among common sentiment, do I still predict that Trump will win this election? Well, that derives from one simple poster that was on Bill Clinton's wall. And it said, "It's the economy, stupid." Everything about elections is based on the economy. We look at these minute details like demographics, like voting trends, like this and that and the other thing. The vast majority of elections are determined by none other than the economy. In 2020, when COVID was at an all-time high, it was the economy that led to Trump losing. In 2008, when there was a recession and George Bush, the Republican, was an incumbent president, obviously term limited, who did voters vote for? The Democrat. In 1984, when people thought the economy was at an all-time high, who did people vote for? The incumbent. So with that being said, at a point in history where unemployment is increasing, inflation is high, and the national debt is over $30 trillion, the incumbent party will not win this election. It's the economy, stupid. Hey, welcome back. And when I finally thought this election wouldn't have anything else crazy happen for like maybe a day or two or a week, just give me a little break, some more crazy stuff happens. There is crazy stuff happening every single day of this election cycle. So I'm going to cover what's been happening and how it affects this election prediction. So this is my Harris versus Trump election prediction based on the polls for the 2024 election. And before we go on, YouTube has not been promoting my content as much as it used to, so make sure to like and subscribe if you want to join the 2%. And also, I have some books attached below, and if you buy any of them, then I get a commission, so there's that if you want to buy some books. I'll have J.D. Vance's book, Trump's book, and Harris's book. And now, we'll get back to the prediction. So first, we're going to start with the piece of news that comes from the Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan, and I can't really pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, the Eastern Europeans watching this video, but I'm going to try. Evan Gershkovich. And anyways, he's a Wall Street Journal reporter that was wrongly convicted in Russia of basically being a spy. And essentially, Russia's done this time and time again. They did it pretty rightfully, I'm not going to lie, to Brittany Griner. She actually kind of smuggled in drugs, technically. She smuggled in marijuana, which is a drug. So technically speaking, she smuggled in drugs. So, I mean, them locking her up was kind of justified. But them locking up this Wall Street Journal reporter for absolutely no reason was not. And I'll tell you the reason they locked him up. Because Russia just plays the US like a fiddle. They lock our people up, and then they use the people they lock up to essentially negotiate to get some bad people out of jail in the US. They got some arms dealer guy before, and now they're getting more bad people. They're getting assassins, they're getting spies, etc. So Russia just plays the US like a fiddle, and the US really can't do anything about it. They can't do much. We don't really play by the same rules as they do. We try to stand on a moral high ground, so we don't really lock people up for no reason. We have our moral code, our constitution. Putin, he doesn't really have that same moral code. He just locks people up and tries to get people that were rightfully locked up by the US back to Russia, where they could continue to be assassins, spies, whatever they were, arms dealers, etc. But it just shows how the United States, the most powerful, in my opinion, the best country in the world, could just be played by a fiddle by another country. So that's my update with this article. I am glad this reporter is back. It's a shame what had to happen to get him back. He didn't do anything wrong. But I do have to say that Brittany Griner being traded with an arms dealer was really, really stupid, especially considering what she did actually warranted her being imprisoned. Probably not to the extent that she was imprisoned or her sentence itself. She didn't deserve that sentence, but it's common sense not to smuggle in drugs to another country, especially Russia, and it seems like she didn't quite understand that. And the bottom line is I'm glad Gershkovich is back, but I really don't think him being back really will prevent anything like this from happening in the future, which is the bigger issue here. The fact that essentially an American citizen should not feel safe going to Russia because Russia essentially could just take you, give you false imprisonment, and you have to basically be in their prisons until the US negotiates for you. And you better hope that the US will negotiate for you. So I guess my PSA is I wouldn't recommend going to Russia, and hopefully you learned something from this. But now my next piece of news is that Shapiro canceled weekend fundraisers. So it seems like he's going to be the pick. And I do find it funny that he was fundraising in the Hamptons. And it just seems like based on his fundraising, Harris's fundraising, and how he was fundraising in Deal, New Jersey, one of the richest parts of New Jersey, not that long ago. Seems like the primary strategy of both the Democrats and Republicans this cycle is to go after mega donors rather than the average person. Even though this is like one of the most populist elections of all time, I feel like both candidates are kind of running on a populist platform. They are trying to get mega donors to actually fund their campaigns. The main point here is that Josh Shapiro will likely be our next vice presidential nominee for the Democrats. And I also find it interesting that Harris has over a 50% chance of being our next president, so she will likely become the first female president of the United States. And the reason her chance is this high is because it's the chance of either Biden not completing his term, and also the chance of her winning this election, so that's why her chance is so high. But still, we go into this prediction, and I'll start by looking at both coasts. So the West Coast is basically dominated by cities, Washington by Seattle, Oregon by Portland, and California by LA. Hawaii will also go to Harris solidly, and the East Coast has similar voting trends as the West Coast. New York, dominated by New York City, New Jersey, having many large cities of its own, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., and Illinois all go to Harris, as well as Maine's 1st District. On the other hand, the more rural states of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Alaska, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas. Texas has some more cities. It's a little closer, but it still goes to Trump. Florida, same as Texas, still goes to Trump. Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and South Carolina are all going to Donald Trump. I do think it can be safely said Texas and Florida will go to Trump, but I don't think the margins will be safe, if you know what I mean. The margins will be somewhat like 7 or 8. It won't be particularly 10, but they will pretty solidly go to Donald Trump. Same with Colorado and New Mexico for Harris. They will almost certainly go to Harris, but not by safe margins. Ohio will go to Trump by safe margins. We saw in 2020 that it went to Trump by 8, and now that he picked Vance, it's pretty much a done deal in that state. Nebraska's second is actually pretty contentious, but I do think it'll go to Harris. It's the more urban part of Nebraska. Look at this. So each of these 3 districts has the same population, and this is the smallest district. So it's clearly the district that's more urban. And with that being said, urban areas usually go Democrat, and even though it's in Nebraska, it'll go to Harris. On the other hand, you can see Maine's 1st District is the more urban part of Maine, whereas Maine's 2nd District is the more rural part of Maine. So Maine's 2nd District goes to Trump, whereas Maine's 1st District goes to Harris. And anyways, so now that that's covered, we have Trump at 219 and Harris at 197. And this time, I'm going to do it in a little bit of a different order. I'm going to start with the Midwest, and these are considered the most contentious states. Minnesota is the least contentious, but then again, Minnesota is also a Midwest state, obviously, so it does still have a chance of going to Trump. Remember, Minnesota only went to Clinton by 1.5 back in 2016. This margin will be a little more to the left, maybe 3 or 4, but not far enough that Trump doesn't stand a chance in the state. And now we get to Wisconsin. So Wisconsin has been polling probably the closest out of every state in the union. It has Harris up by +2 in a recent poll. So it seems like Harris is leading in most of the recent polls in Wisconsin. And according to the market, Wisconsin actually is barely going to Trump. So Wisconsin is essentially a 50-50 state. And I will give it to Donald Trump because even though these 2 recent polls do have it going to Harris, the polls that include RFK Jr., and he is almost certainly going to run. If not, he'll endorse Donald Trump. Those polls have Donald Trump in the lead. So Trump will win Wisconsin. However, Michigan is a different story. Michigan, which has Detroit, is a little more urban than Wisconsin. Additionally, Biden won Michigan in 2020 by more than he won Wisconsin by. And Michigan usually votes like Wisconsin, just a little bit more to the left, not in 2016, but in almost every other election. You can see this pattern. So Michigan will probably have a similar pattern in this election. Currently, Harris is down 7 electoral votes, but that will change with the state of Virginia. Virginia has been polling towards Donald Trump recently, but if there are new polls released that aren't like 15 days old, I do think Harris will lead in those polls. And the betting markets agree with Virginia going to Harris with a 79% chance. So with Harris in the lead by 6 points, Donald Trump actually ties it up with Nevada. Nevada is one of the 2 states alongside Arizona in the West Coast that is a swing state, but polls very much so towards Donald Trump. This Bloomberg poll had Harris winning in almost every poll, so there could be some methodology they use, something they use, some sample error, I don't know. It seems like the Bloomberg polls were shifted more to the left than almost every single other poll, because you can see every other poll has Trump in the lead. This is the Senate race, that's why it's blue, but every poll has Trump in the lead, so he takes home Nevada. Similarly, he also takes home Arizona. If Harris thought Mark Kelly would give her a good chance at Arizona, she would pick him as VP, but Arizona does not seem likely as going to Harris. Arizona seems like it will go to Donald Trump in this election. You could see in every poll, except the Bloomberg poll, again, Harris is losing in the state of Arizona, and Arizona goes to Donald Trump. On the other hand, Harris will likely pick Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, and will likely win the state of Pennsylvania. You could see that in Pennsylvania, Harris has been creeping up in the polls. Even this poll, this is not the Bloomberg poll. The Bloomberg poll, surprisingly, did have Trump leading in Pennsylvania, but it seems like almost every other poll does have Harris leading in the state. So she is currently leading by 8 electoral votes, and she does take home Maine as well as New Hampshire. Maine and New Hampshire are both substantially polling for her, and they both went to Biden back in 2020, Clinton in 2016, Obama, etc. Those 2 states do often go to the Democrats. So Harris gets up to 260 electoral votes, and Trump needs to sweep the remaining 2 states to win this election. Will he? Well, continue watching to find out. In North Carolina, Donald Trump does take home the state. North Carolina has an unpopular gubernatorial candidate. You could see a lot of people aren't voting in this poll. You can see the highest vote getter has 38% of the vote. People don't like either candidate, but it seems that in the presidential election, people are more solid with their beliefs, and their beliefs are that they want Trump to win. In this Bloomberg poll that had Harris winning almost every swing state, Trump won. So it seems like Trump will win in the state of North Carolina, which isn't surprising given the fact that he won North Carolina in an election where even Kansas wasn't safely going to Biden, where even South Carolina wasn't going safely to Biden. Trump still won the swing state of North Carolina, and I don't think that'll change in 2024. And lastly, we get to Georgia. So even though this one poll has Harris in the lead, every other poll seems to be even, if not Trump in the lead. So it seems like for the tiebreaker, I'll go to the betting markets, which have Trump winning in Georgia. With that being said, Trump wins 278 to 260 against Kamala Harris in this election. That is my prediction. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more.